Hey, so this is my recap of Kindred Season 1, Episode 2, Sabina. So it picks up where Kevin turns around and he see that Dana is no longer in the closet.
You know?
And so he starts to freak out and he's actually about to leave because I guess he didn't know what else to do. And this is when he finds her on the kitchen floor. And now he kind of shakes her awake. She kind of comes back, regains consciousness or whatever. And so, of course, he has her in the bathroom. He's trying to patch her up because she has like bruises and stuff on her. And she's asking questions. He's trying to figure out what's going on. And of course, she asks like, how long was I gone? And he said a minute, maybe even a few seconds.
How long was I gone?
Like less than a minute, not even seconds.
And so she starts to freak out. And she was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's going to happen again. So she's trying to get changed because she, at this time, was in her... she was in her bathrobe. And so she was like, if it happens again, I don't want to be in my robe. And so while they're having this conversation, there's a knock at the door. It's the neighbor. So she sends Kevin to deal with the neighbor.
I'm sorry to bother you, but have you seen him?
And so, of course, she starts asking her about the comment that she had made before in the first episode where she said, well, you know how she loved her mom, but her mother's mental health was fragile. And she was like, what did you mean by that? And so she started telling her about how her mother would have like manic episodes. And then, eventually she started, seeing things.
She had fits of mania, and near the end of her life, she claimed to see things.
And of course, Dana starts asking her, so what happened with this crash? Did they ever find the body? And she finds out that they never found her mother's body. And so the neighbor is clearly suspicious. And she basically went home. When she went home, she told her husband as much. Like, something's going on over there. This is like her second time going over because of the screaming and, the stuff that's going on. Obviously some weird stuff.
Did you find her?
No, but something very bad is going on next door.
What?
So Kevin, they're talking, and Kevin thinks, well, maybe it's this house, since all this didn't all start until she moved to California. And so as he's trying to get her out of the house, it happens again. But this time, because Kevin was holding on to her, she pulled him back with her. And so now they're kind of in the woods, and you can see he is terrified. And her name is being called. And so she runs to see what's going on. And Rufus, of course, he's injured once again, climbing a tree, fell out the tree, and seemed to have broken both his legs. And so his playmate, as they would have, slaves where they would hired by children to be playmates for their kids, Nigel, of course, he's terrified of what could possibly happen when he goes back to tell, and find out this boy is injured and they were playing together. And so Dana sends Kevin to go back with Nigel to get help. So I guess seeing a white face will make them feel some kind of way.
What's your name? Nigel, you need to run and go get help. I wasn't supposed to let him climb no trees.
And so they run into Luke. Luke sends Nigel to go get the doctor. Luke goes back with Kevin to get Rufus to bring him back to the house. So this is where we meet the rest of the Whalens. So the Whalens, that's Rufus, his parents, Thomas and Margaret. So Margaret see him in the back of the thing, and of course she's freaking out, like, oh my God, what has happened? Da 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 da.
Oh my Rufus! Come over and help me bring my Rufus out. His leg is broken.
And the father comes out, Thomas, and he's like, what is all this nonsense? What is all this noise? And yes, Thomas is Jason Stackhouse from True Blood. So he comes out and he's trying to, he's like, well, what happened? Where's Nigel?
Young Marsh Rufus fell out of a tree, broke his leg.
Where's Nigel?
And Luke tells him I went to send him to go get the doctor. And of course he kind of freaked out, like, the doctor. And then for some odd reason, I don't know what his issue is with Rufus, but he ends up saying, take this demon in the house, referring to his son.
Carry this demon up to his bedroom and out of my sight.
So, of course, all this time, Kevin is just freaking out. He don't know what the hell's going on. So, eventually, Thomas ends up asking, well, what happened? What do y'all, where did y'all come from? And Dana ends up speaking up first, saying that they're travelers and they just kind of got lost. And, she was telling the story, kind of come up off the cuff. So Thomas invites Kevin into the house to get him a change of clothes and get him situated, and she sends Dana with the slaves to the slave area. And so Dana get there, and of course she's looking for Olivia, and nobody's really talking because everybody's busy moving and working.
Go on, take a seat.
And so you can see she's kind of sitting around, kind of taking it all in. And eventually Luke comes up, and they talk, and he basically saying because it's a storm coming, it was snowing, that he's not gonna be able to take her to see Olivia. And of course she asked him, like, how long has it been since I've been here? For her, it's only been like a couple of minutes, maybe an hour. For them, he's saying it's like been 3 or 4 months.
How long has it been since we last saw each other?
Must be about 3-4 months now. Why?
So while this is going on, Kevin is in the house, and Sabina, one of the slaves, brought him a change of clothes. And so while you could clearly see that Sabina is not well. She's limping, she's kind of slow moving. And Thomas comes in as Kevin was changing and say, wait a minute, is my slave not helping you? And he was like, oh, no, fine. It's fine. I'm used to dressing myself. He is clearly uncomfortable with this whole situation.
Is my dresser failing her assistant?
No, I'm just used to undressing myself.
So, they eventually sit down to talk, and the story that they basically said was that they were traveling and they got robbed. And so Thomas is asking, for more details on this robbery. And so then he started asking about Dana, like, who is she? Where is she? Because she's kind of, outspoken for, a person of her station. And so Kevin was like, oh, well, she's from New York. And he was asking him, like, was there all the Negroes speak from New York? And he was like, I don't know. She's my first, slave I ever owned. He said, oh, so you're new to the arrangement. And so he basically said that if you want my advice, I would trade her in for a more docile slave.
Unless the amusements that girl provides are singular, you might do best to trade her in.
So the doctor's up with Rufus. They've decided that they're going to bleed him and, set his leg and all that because he has a fever and all this. And so they realize that Margaret, his mother, she's too much. She's a lot, right? And so they need to get her out of the way. So Thomas ends up pulling Margaret away so that they can treat Rufus.
Grab her.
So in order to pay for the doctor's visit, Kevin realized that they sold Sabina. So Dana is now in with Rufus, and he asked her to read to him. So of course Margaret arrives, and she's like, "What's going on here?" And so of course Rufus is like, "Well, it's okay. Where she's from, it's okay for them to learn to read."
I asked her to read to me, Mama. Where she come from, it's allowed.
And so she was kind of feeling some kind of way and was like, okay, well, continue reading. And she kept interrupting Dana. And Rufus basically said, well, why don't you, I'm trying to listen to her, but I can't hear over you. Why don't you get out? So he ended up throwing his mama out.
I can't hear her with you talking.
Well, all I said, baby.
Don't say nothing, Mama. Go away and stop bothering me.
So it's later in the day, obviously, and Margaret ends up going back to take him this slice of cake that she had told him about earlier. And by this time, he's asleep. So Dana, she read him until he fell asleep. And when Margaret came in, she kind of fell away. And she basically told Dana she can go.
You're dismissed.
So she's now back, and she's in the room with Kevin. And they're talking, trying to figure out how they're going to get out of here, how they're going to get to Olivia. Kevin is over. He's ready to go. So Marguerite comes in and basically, thanked him for being nice to her and the whole thing. And basically asked Dana, okay, are you ready for me to escort you to your lodgings?
Are you ready to retire? I'd be happy to escort you to your lodgings.
And she was like, well, no, I think my master would prefer that I stay with him. And she was like, well, no, we absolutely don't allow slaves to sleep. They have their own lodging. We insist they sleep in their own area. And so, of course, Kevin chimes in, and he was like, I'm going to have to insist. And he was like, oh, don't worry. If there's a bell by your bedside, if you need anything, we'll make sure that we can get her to you.
If you require her for anything, simply ring the bell at your bedside, and she should be able to comply.
And so basically she ends up taking her to an attic, to a pallet on the floor, and that is where she slept. So that's pretty much how this episode ends.